Hey, good morning. We're here. I'm talking about storytelling today. And, really, in this moment of COVID 19, you have to wonder if anything else is relevant to talk about, actually. We're all working to see how we're adapting and coping, likewise, with the challenges of this moment. So, we're going to talk about storytelling for sure within this context, within the context of what's most important. And really, that's what story is all about. For ages, for eons, really, our species has looked at story and looked to story for telling us and guiding us, giving us direction, passing on wisdom, sharing what's most important, telling us who we are, who we belong to, where it all begins, what is the story of being and the meaning of that, and also teaching. So, in order to learn life ways, we would tell stories, and there's some suggestion even that there are areas of the brain localized for the understanding of narrative. I'll get to that in a little bit because we're going to be talking. I'll just ping just briefly this research on the default mode network that I've been talking so much about. But just to say that overall, then there are two methods, and overall in teaching and learning. And story is key for one of these, and I think you'll see why. There are traditions that teach you how to do their way, and that's important early on. That is, as an artist, one has to learn the craft. You have to learn control over the medium. You have to learn how watercolors work on the page. You have to learn how oils work on the page. You have to, if you're woodworking or something, you have to learn the different types of wood and the tools so that you can begin to shape. And you begin to learn the interaction of oneself with the tool, with the medium. And that is a while that it takes to learn. And we do that over time, and often within an apprentice type relationship. And so in that process, you learn how to do things like their way, right? And so there are approaches and times when you learn how to do something their way, and then there are times where you are taught how to find your way. And in organic intelligence, we have a very clear pathway of learning both of those. And in the end, we are offering how to learn your way. And this is why story is so key, and why those that I studied with use story so much. If you think of parables and stories in biblical literature, if you look at the storytellers, in traditional society, these were the healers, these were the prophets also, who could also critique the current system and offer a better alternative. And building from traditional knowledge, right? Our species arose from a situation where we didn't have YouTube and other ways of getting information, and so we told stories. This is the way we would pass on information. And probably, if you think about it, we're not necessarily the only species who does this. It's kind of amazing, really, from our human standpoint. The elephants are probably just rolling their eyes, going, "Oh, those humans," But like elephants, there's an instance where there was a drought in a particular area where there were elephants, and the elephants began to journey. And this is a herd that had been studied for a time, and they began to journey. They began to set off, and they entered into lands and areas that they had not been to before. And the leader of that group, was moving on and leading that group, and they were just walking into unknown territory, because all of the um, all of the water sources had dried up, and so here was this group heading into unknown territory, except that it was found that the one who was leading was the offspring of one who had actually been to the watering hole that they landed at. So there was an intergenerational transmission somehow, or if you think of the bees dance, they come back to the hive and they do the dance and they map out, here's where to go. Here's the information in the environment that we need, and I'll show you where that is, and so we can be together. And so these stories, the stories are ways that we pass on important information for our well-being. And so there are this organic intelligence approach is the approach that helps you in the end find your way. And finding your way is what really matters. And honestly, people have taken that to mean, oh, now I'll teach you Steve's way, and here's orientation. Here's what I think orientation is, and they sort of appropriate the tools as a way of saying, do it my way. But that's not actually Steve's way. That's not organic intelligence way. Our way is to offer a place and an environment and a learning structure where you find your way, and that's what really matters, is that emergence and that intelligence, because the collective intelligence is what we need your intelligence right now. Right? We are in a situation that is unprecedented in this generation, which is a real challenge to our collective ability to solve problems together and to work together. This incredible challenge that we're facing here with COVID-19. And so the nature of story becomes quite important. The nature of our learning together and the nature of our sharing together and the real collective intelligence that we have and are. So that's the direction we're going, and why I'm talking about story today and its relevance to this moment, because this is a collective question, right? Social distancing is what it's called, and really keeping our distance, not so much even so that we protect our individual selves, but that that we protect our collective selves. Although really. I have two children in particular, 12-year-old and 21-year-old, and my 21-year-old Jacob is sharing how friends are disregarding the common sort of measures of social distancing and going out partying, doing the things that we all would like to still enjoy if we were 21, and so and because there is this story out there that is like, oh, young people don't get this, and it is so early in the game that we are realizing, actually, new data coming out, 38% of people in ICUs are below 55. Right, so we are quite concerned about the stories that are being told, and want to connect with you and help you connect with others to get the information out that actually we need to have a collective approach. And if the notion of preserving our healthcare system for those who are like in serious shape, if that's not enough, you have skin in this game, and that skin in this game means anybody over 18, 19, you could be in the ICU. So really, the social distancing here at Organic Intelligence, we think of that as spacious solidarity. Spacious solidarity. And on our clinical mindfulness course, I'll be working with and talking with Paula Damasi, and we'll be elaborating the support systems and the ways of behavior if you want to get the latest on COVID updates. from our interpretation of the research. That's going to be available on our website, organicintelligence.org. Just join in Clinical Mindfulness and get the newsletter. That's the thing to do. At the bottom of the page or elsewhere, get that newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter. We'll send you updates on these free programs, like what we're doing right here. In this time, we are offering massive resources for people online because that's available. So the stories that we're telling, there are many. Last night, the community gathered together, and we, in our own spacious solidarity, watched the movie The Wizard of Oz. And then later today at 10:30, we'll be talking about that together because it's a classic story. And a classic story. There are different kinds of stories, and so there is, in particular, what Joseph Campbell pointed to was the hero's journey, and The Wizard of Oz is one of those. It's the hero's journey, where there is a classic kind of form for the way of unfolding and the way that the hero's journey goes. I'm sorting my resources here for you. So and just to know that there are many different types of stories. There is like the underdog. There's the quest. There's rags to riches. There's a cautionary tale, and there are teaching stories. We're going to be talking about stories today that have this other meaning. And some of the teachers for me in this area were, of course, Milton Erickson, Stephen Gilligan, one of Erickson's students, and also, in particular, mentorship, really, an apprenticeship with Reverend Robert Edgar Clyde Jr., Bob Clyde, my storytelling mentor. So my gratitude to those and more, like my mom. Who would, as a young person, look out the window and say, "Oh, look at those robins, and look at the robins going out into the backyard, and they'll get worms, and then they'll bring those worms back to the babies, and how they just know how to find those. You walk in the yard and you think, I don't see any worms, but those robins know how to find what they need and bring them back and sort of raise a family." And there's a messaging about caring, about this innate skillfulness that I got early on. Those were the early lessons in organic intelligence. Thank you to my parents and all ancestors. So the stories can be these like cautionary tales also, or the most lean part of that is not the mythic or archetypic stories that we want to be sharing today, but more like I wash my hands every 20 minutes and I sing happy birthday twice when I do it, and then I feel better about myself. Right? And so there are those stories. It's like, do what I'm telling you to do, or do it my way, do it this way. There are those, right? These sort of moralistic stories. Others have much more depth, and the some of those I tell ongoingly, and I have or should have. I'll just say I have. Storytellers have a license, a kind of license, and that card, their membership card says two things. On the front side that you show people, it says it bears repeating. It bears repeating. That means, well, I told you this story, I don't know, it might have been 6 months ago. I'm telling you again. It bears repeating because we can't help ourselves. And then on the other side, it says, telling a story is telling the truth that may be greater than the literal reality. And for this, we rely on mystery. And mystery means there is deeper truth. There is this literal world here, and underneath this, perhaps there is a deeper truth. And that's what we're hoping that our stories will tell us. And when they tell these stories that just rock your psyche, and there is this sense of meaningfulness to it, and you've heard a story and you feel somehow more yourself, like, I've been reached, I've been touched somehow, then something different has happened. And that's the kind of story that we're looking for today, and that's what we are hoping to share. And I do a whole workshop on storytelling about how that happens. But the short form of it is, you sit with a person and you care about them, you care about this moment, and then you just open your mouth and you see what story comes out. And so I'll do more courses in that, and if you're interested, just hang in there, sign up for that newsletter on organicintelligence.org, and I'll share with you that. And I was mentioning, there are basic stories that we look at, and the hero's journey has a three-phase process, and that three-phase process is really key. And there are the one of the main stories that we talk about here in Organic Intelligence is we talk about the what's wrong attention or negativity bias, or the strange attractor, that is this disorganizing effect in our biology, or chaos, we call it. And we call it chaos because there's a really clear three-phase model and a three-phase progression that is archetypic. And it is so archetypic, it is found in complexity science. That is, complexity science really looks at phase transitions from one phase to the next. So in the hero's journey story, there is, as with the Wizard of Oz, and many of us will talk about that at 10:30 a little bit later, there is this departure. So one leaves the familiar, and this is often like in the Wizard of Oz, it's a tornado, right? There is this vortex of destruction, right? And then Dorothy leaves, and then the second phase is this initiation. You're in this special world, and in this special world there is this birth into new being. And there is this, and that goes through trials, through challenges, through, and in the Wizard of Oz, it's bring me the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West, right? There is this task that has to be done, and then the adventurer, the hero in this case, Dorothy, learns to see and begins to see clearly. So that is, in the departure area, in that time in the original world, there is illusion, there is delusion, there is lack of clarity, there is chaos. And then in the second phase, there is the learning to see. And the learning to see through trial and error, and through gathering also resources in the midst of that, the gathering of appropriate resources there, and then the return. And with the return, there is brought back the ability to live in the now, to see in the present moment, to live in the present moment, and perhaps to assist others in their own mythic journey, that way. And that's a three-part journey. And that three-part journey is not unlike the journey of most stories. For instance, in Organic Intelligence, we talk about the what's wrong attention, or the negativity bias, as this draw to what's wrong. And there is, of course, this great story called Bug's Life. And in this movie, there's a bug zapper up there, and the bug zapper is there, the bright light, and there are two moths fluttering about the light, and one of them sees their friend heading into the light, and they go, "Oh, Charlie, look out! Don't do it!" And then Charlie is fluttering toward the light and goes, "I can't help it. It's so beautiful." and Charlie moves on to the next phase. And so That's it. There's this strange attractor, the siren song. And when I say siren song, I'm referring now to the mythic story of Odysseus. Odysseus is on this journey, right? And they're on a boat, and there are these sirens. And the siren song is so beautiful. People go mad with the beauty of that, and they hurl themselves into the water to try to get there, and then they are drowned. So Odysseus tells the other sailors on this boat, he says, "Lash me to this mast, tie me up, and no matter what I say, until we get past the sirens, don't let me go. Don't let me go. And here's beeswax, and put the beeswax in your ears so you don't hear that siren song and go mad and hurl yourself into the sea and thinking that you're getting what you want." And so the crew does. And so they tie up Odysseus there to the mast, and then they have the beeswax in their ears, and then they begin to go past the sirens, and the sirens sing their song, and Odysseus is like, "Oh yeah, hey, y'all, you can untie me now. I'm fine here." And they're like, "Can't hear you." And he's like, "No, really, you can untie me now. I was just kidding about all of that." And they tie him tighter. And he's like, "No, no, no, no. It's fine. It's fine. I order you to let me go." And they tie him tighter, and then finally they pass there and they untie him because he wanted the experience of hearing that, but found a safe way to be able to do it. And it took a crew to do that. We have in our own biology this what's wrong attention, or this negativity bias that is formed, and it's a conditioning process. And we are drawn over and over again into situations that do not help us, that are dangerous to us, or just keep us stuck and stable in that sense. So these stories then tell us how we can move from one phase to the next. And in organic intelligence, we have a fully integrated sense of that. This is a clinical approach. I was trained in clinical psychology and trained as a therapist. And so I have integrated this three-phase model, created this three-phase model, in fact. So if you're seeing it elsewhere, it's actually belongs here at Organic Intelligence. And so these are the three-phase models. This three-phase model, I didn't create the three-phase model, right? This is archetypic. This is just how things work. But if we're going to understand how to work with the biology, we have to understand this. We have to understand how the system moves from this first phase to the second and then to the third. What are these three phases? Well, it's departure, initiation, and return, or it is the sirens. Plato said that there are three types of sirens, and those three types of sirens are the cathartic, or the purificatory, or the generative, or the celestial, right? The celestial. The generative, keeping things going, and then long enough that you can then be in the celestial, which is union or unity, or consciousness of oneness and participation in that. Or this is Shiva, this is Vishnu, and this is Brahma, right? The Hindu, the triumvirate there in the Hindu trinity, and that is the destroyer, the sustainer, and the creator, right? So all three of these forces are important, and they are vital, and they are archetypic. And all of the stories that we are looking at will have this movement through this kind of thing. And for us, we are also then looking to understand and learn about the nature of story that tells us who we are. And so there are so many stories like this that I tell that tell these important ideas, just highlight the things that we know already, and in that are prophetic. One of the stories that I was thinking of recently, right? This is this isn't, this is you. This is the story of you. Whether you could read certainly other stories about you. I was thinking about Jada. Jada's my 12-year-old. When she was young, she would go across the street here because our neighbors had chickens, and she was quite small, and so she came back with this story, this understanding, like there are these chickens, and the mommy chickens sit on the eggs, and they keep the eggs warm, and then the babies hatch because they've been warm. So let's get some eggs, and this was her thinking at the time. Let's get some eggs and put them in the oven and make it hotter so that the eggs will hatch faster. Right? This makes sense. Hotter means faster. Heat helps this process happen. So more heat, faster. Well, it doesn't work that way, you know. And so, if you want chicks is one thing. If you want hard-boiled eggs, that's something else. So you're right. There's a natural pacing. There's a natural process, and here we are learning this natural process, and this innate wisdom that we have, and that we are. So we're really now coming into the nature of meaning and what is meaningful. And just to say, by the way, I've just put out. I'm going to give you for a week access to a webinar that I did for the End of Trauma course. The End of Trauma course is a stress and resilience course that we have here. It's all online, as are now all of our programs online. And there was a webinar that I did on meaning, which includes the understanding the relationship to cognition, the understanding of the relationship to thought, the understanding of the way we evolve in the midst of all of this by looking at the relationship of meaning to all the other channels of experience like image, affect, sensation, and orientation. And so I'm making the organic intelligence. Sign up for our newsletter, and then you can, and then I'll send out an email about that. Soon. So get on that newsletter list, and I'll make that available to you. And it's a nice, succinct description of all about organic intelligence and this three-phase model and more. So, but it looks at meaning. It looks at what is meaningful and that sense of meaningfulness. And when we get to that sense of meaningfulness, we are coming to this experience that is integrated. And what the research is showing, this is with Degani, Damasio, and others. And again, it's the title is always, reading the title is always my favorite part. Thank you for the thumbs up, by the way. If you have a chance to like this video and appreciate that, I'd appreciate that. That helps us become more available to others. And so here it is. Here's the research. Decoding the neural representation of story meanings across languages. That's right. Decoding, thank you for the thumbs up. Decoding the neural representation of story meanings across languages. That's right. And so what the story of this is that they took different languages, they decoded, they had stories told in these different languages, and then they had functional MRIs being done while people are doing that. And what they found was super interesting, which is that the stories and the brain areas that lit up, they used to be looking for discrete parts, and now they're able to see networks, and they're seeing that the brain's areas of representation, understanding, meaningfulness happens in the default mode network, and areas that are specific to understanding the default mode network. And what they say is these results demonstrate that neurosemantic encoding of narrative, that means understanding, happens at a higher level than individual semantic units. That is, there is this collection, there is this integration, there is this network of ways that we integrate information, and that it's associated with the default mode network. I'll talk more about the default network coming up, but just to say, the default network used to be thought of as just a resting state or like a passive state. There is something to that, like daydream. I believe that probably also poetry is another way that we can have this default network going. Thank you, Berkeley. Carnine, another clinical mindfulness contributor and OI member, for sharing this poem, which I'd like to share with you from Dory Midnight. And it's called Wash Your Hands. We are humans, relearning to wash our hands. Washing our hands is an act of love. Washing our hands is an act of care. Washing our hands is an act that puts the hyperture. Like this water is poured from a jug your best friend just carried for 3 miles from the spring. They had to climb a mountain, not go to work when we are sick. It's already time that we might want to know who in our neighborhood has cancer, who has a new baby, who is old, with children in another state, who has extra water, who has a root cellar, who is a nurse, who has a garden full of elencom disabled folks. That young people think about old people. It's already time to stop using synthetic fragrances, to not smell like bodies, to pretend like we're not all dying. It's already time to remember that those scents make so many of us sick. It's already time not to take it personally when someone doesn't want to hug you. It's already time to slow down and feel how scared we are. We're already afraid. Blame capitalism, blame patriarchy, blame white supremacy. It's already time to hang garlic on our doors, to dip our handkerchiefs in time. Looking forward to seeing you here next week for more musings.